Our first performer tonight is Mark Adams in Finding the Real Me. America is a country of immigrants, but you'd never know it. With snapshots from his life, Mark traces his discovery of his family's escape from the Holocaust and his children's struggles with their identity. Please welcome Mark Adams.
Hi, I'm Mark Adams. I like that name. It's strong. It's easy to pronounce. My mother's from Boston, some blue-blooded family. So when I was a little kid, people used to always come up to me and say, "Are you related to John Quincy Adams?" I wanted to say yes, but Adams is actually my father's family name, and they're from Saginaw. They're not related to anybody famous. Philadelphia, 1970. I'm riding the school bus home. It's a beautiful spring day. We clamber down off the bus, and I'm maybe 8 years old. My friends and I are walking down the street. I live on Ivywood Lane. It's an idyllic 1960s suburb, meandering street through a forest. We even had a cul-de-sac where we could play wiffle ball. And then up ahead, I see something strange. It's two old people walking really slowly, leaning on each other. Their clothes are odd, kind of like they're from a different era. The woman's wearing heavy shoes and thick stockings and a wool skirt, and way too warm for a spring day in Philadelphia. And the man is really small, maybe 5 feet tall, shock white hair and sharp features. He's dressed formally with a tie and a wool coat. And I look at them. It's my grandparents from Saginaw. What are they doing here? Mana, Pata, you're here. My, Mark, you've grown so big. Margot, look at our grandson. Look at how big he is. I don't know what to say to them. They're just so foreign. I know I'm supposed to love them, but I don't actually know how to talk to them. And so the whole week that they're there, we make polite conversation, but I never feel like we get below the veneer to understand who they really are or the lives that they've lived. Month later, summer evening, we're playing wiffle ball out on the cul-de-sac. We whack the ball and we're running around the bases. All the kids are having a great time. My dad's walking the dog and my dad looks over and goes, "Hey, can I give it a try?" My dad doesn't do sports. I've never played catch with my dad. "Sure, Dad, batter up." So my dad steps up to the plate. We're like, Dad, you're standing on the plate. You need to back up. And he gets ready, and my friend Michael's pitching the ball. Michael throws in a sneaky slider. My dad's not even close to the ball. So we all look at each other and kind of like, yeah, Michael gets it. And so my dad gets back up to the plate. He's getting ready, and Michael throws a nice, easy floater. Nobody strikes out a wiffle ball. Please, dear God, let my dad hit the ball. My dad gets ready for the third time. He's getting kind of tense, and Michael throws another nice, easy floater. God damn it, this is too hard. He just wanted to play with his kids, but he didn't know how. Philadelphia, 1978. I may be 15 years old, coming home from school. My mother is a kind, generous woman who has a naive belief in the goodness of the world. "Mom, I'm home." "Mark, can you come down here a minute?" "Sure, Mom. What's up?" "There's something I need to talk to you about." What's going on? "I think it's important that we not keep secrets in this family." "Oh, shit. Did I leave my pipe in my pocket?" "Mark, I don't know how to explain this to you, but when your father was born, the family name wasn't Adams." "What do you mean?" "When your father was born, his name was Weissenberg." "Weissenberg? Why am I just hearing about this now?" "Honey, I just learned this myself. Your father's very sensitive about this. Weissenberg, is that Jewish? Yes, but your father wasn't raised Jewish. That's why his family escaped from Germany and came to the United States. Wow, I just had no idea. Huh? Is it okay if I go play with Michael now? Yeah, sure, honey, go play with Michael, but this is sensitive information. Be careful with it, okay? Don't worry, Mom, I've got it. So I thought about it for about 5 minutes. I've got, I don't know, 2 or 3 friends who are Jewish. They're okay. I didn't have any problem with being Jewish. And in a funny way, I thought it was kind of cool. So that night at dinner, we're getting ready to eat and we were having, overcooked meatloaf, soggy frozen vegetables and mashed potatoes from a box. What can I say? It was the 70s. My dad comes rushing in late as usual. Sorry, I'm late. Traffic was really bad. Hey, Dad, I hear the family name is Weissenberg and you're Jewish. Who the hell told you that? Mom did. That's a secret and stays a secret. Understood? Yeah, Dad, I got it. What landmine had I stepped on? Philadelphia, 1987. I'm home visiting from school when my mother hands me a bright blue ring binder. What's this? It's your grandfather Walter's life story. They wrote down everything that happened to them when they left Germany. We thought you should have a copy. Wow, that's really cool, Mom. Thank you. I need to read this. I put it on the shelf and didn't open it for 35 years. Jakarta, Indonesia, 1995. I'm living with my girlfriend Marilee, who's Chinese American. Ari's my driver and window into all things Indonesian. He's driving me through the endless Jakarta traffic when he looks in the rearview mirror. Mr. Mark, I have a question. Sure, Ari, what is it? Miss Marilee, is she American? Yeah, Ari, we're both American. Mr. Mark, you American. Miss Marilee, she Chinese. Ari, she's just as American as I am. No, Miss Marilee, she's Chinese. Why? Was my Indonesian driver challenging the nationality of my girlfriend? It's like, what's going on? And then it hit me. There are millions of Chinese in Indonesia, but if you're Chinese in Indonesia, it doesn't matter how long you've lived there, you'll always be Chinese. You'll always be the other. Ari's questions were almost a prophecy. 2 years later, there were anti-Chinese riots in the streets. Marilee and I rushed to the airport because to an angry mob, her American passport was meaningless. Boston, 1998. My father's getting married to Heidi. My mom passed away 2 years earlier. Her dying wish was that my father would remarry. Just like my mother, Heidi's from Boston and a professor. But rather than a blue-blooded wasp, Heidi's Jewish and committed to her faith. So my father gets married in a classic Jewish ceremony, under the chuppah, wearing a yarmulke, and when he steps on the glass, we all scream, Mazel Tov! Joke's on you, Dad. Cupertino, 2009, 57%. I took the test with 23andMe and I'm 57% Ashkenazi Jew. The 50% I get, that's from my dad's side. But the 7%? My mom was from a blue blood family in Boston. Where'd the 7% come from? And what's 57% Ashkenazi Jew mean? I wasn't raised Jewish. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, they don't mean anything to me. The other day, well, this is back in October, a friend of mine sent me a text and he said, Mark, all this shit going down in Israel, my heart goes out to you and your people. My people? I feel terrible about what's happening in Israel and Gaza, but are these my people? Cupertino, 2016. I'm hiking in the hills with my daughter, Danny. She's a freshman in college. She's a beautiful mixed race young woman with blonde streaks in her hair and almond eyes, but she's kind of shy. You have to coax things out of her. So Danny, how are things going in school? Yeah, they're okay, Dad. Why just okay? Boston's really white. White? What's that mean? Everybody in Boston's white and they want you to fit in their nice, neat little boxes. But honey, you're white, aren't you? Dad, I'm half white and half Chinese. I like being Chinese. I don't want to have to give that up. I'm stunned. I just always assumed my children would be white. And I never thought they would identify as mixed race or Chinese. But what is white anyway? In the 1950s, it was WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. If you were Irish, Italian, Jewish, you weren't white. But over time, as people moved to the suburbs and communities integrated, the definition of what's white's expanded, as long as you're not a person of color. Cupertino, 2019. I'm retired. The kids are out of the house. What am I going to do with all this time? I'm going through some boxes when I find this blue ring binder that my mother gave me so many years before. My grandfather Walter's life story. It's dense, wordy, rambling. But I see that little old man from that street so many years ago. And he's now standing tall and proud. And he's a young man, a defiant man, explaining the twist of his life that took him from Germany to the United States. Breslau, 1920. Germany just lost the Great War. Walter's father, Moritz, ran the finest dress shop in all of Breslau. But he had just died. So Walter was responsible for his mother, 2 sisters, and the dress shop. After the war, I returned to Breslau and took stock of my life. I was 24 and the man of the house. Germany was in disarray. The store had no customers. I needed to make some decisions to set my life on the correct path. I made the appointment with the judge and I changed my affiliation from Jewish to dissident. It was easy. But my mother was aghast that I would leave Judaism. She didn't understand. I could no longer be German and Jewish. I had to make a choice. Walter married Margaret Adam. That's where Adams comes from. And just 6 months before the crash of 29, they had twin boys. The boys, maybe 5 weeks old. Jerry looks at me and he smiles the boyish grin. My son recognizes me. I am responsible for them. I've had many challenges in my life, much humiliation. But throughout, I have had a belief, a confidence in the future. My God, my Christian God stands next to me. Margaret and I joined St. John's Church and we have the boys baptized. Baptized. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't understand the significance of that. Just last year, I was talking with Heidi and she told me the story the first time she was with my father. Mark, you wouldn't believe it. The first time your father and I worked together, oh my God, it was disgusting. I had never seen one like that. Your father, he wasn't circumcised. Breslau, 1931. Germany is collapsing. The economy in free fall. The store bankrupt. My mother blames me. What could I do? No one had money. It takes me 2 years to find a good job. Finally, I get a job at the Labor Department. They value my judgment and my peers respect me. They come to me and they say, Walter, you should join the National Socialist Party. But my parents are Jews. I go, don't worry, the anti-Semitism, it's just propaganda. The Nazi district leader comes to my home a month later. He invites me to join the Nazis. I don't think it's possible. So he writes to Munich, to headquarters, to get guidance. 2 weeks later, the answer comes back. What counts is the blood only. In that moment, I had no illusion. I knew what the Nazis meant for me. There are riots in the streets. The Reichstag fire, Hitler comes to power. Walter loses his job at the Labor Department. How dare they reject me? I am a good German. I need to live as a free man. My sons need to live as free men. We could not leave fast enough. We sold everything and moved to Rome. My one regret, my mother Amanda. I tried to convince her to come with us, but Breslau was a home. She was the old woman. What would the Nazis want with an old woman? Cupertino, 2019. Late at night, I'm surfing the internet and I stumble upon a Holocaust database. For fun, I type in my great-grandmother's name, Amanda Roth Weissenberg. The answer comes right back. Born, Breslau, 1872. Transported to Treblinka, 1942, presumed dead. If you die in a concentration camp, there's no marker, no memorial, nothing. It's as if you didn't exist. You're gone to oblivion. Wrocław, Poland, 2019. Breslau doesn't exist anymore. It's been renamed Wrocław and is a part of Poland. Danny and I get off the tram and make our way to the Jewish cemetery. The gate's rusted. Push it open. The cemetery's in ruins, but I see a shack in the distance. I go and I knock on the door. Caretaker answers, an old Polish gentleman. Do you speak English? A little. I type into Google Translate. We're looking for my great-grandfather, Moritz Weissenberg's tomb. Do you know where his gravestone is? The war, records, all gone. I look at Danny. We came all this way. This place is a mess. I figured they would have a map or a guide or something. There's no way we're going to find it. And I look at him and then I remember. I have a photograph from 1967 of Moritz's tombstone. I pull it up on my phone and I show it to the caretaker and he looks, you follow me. And we take off in this sprint through the cemetery. The cemetery is destroyed. The crypts have been broken open. The tombstone's knocked over. There's bullet holes and beer cans everywhere. But he's running and he's pointing and he's looking. And then he slows down and he looks at the picture. You find. So Danny and I start searching the cemetery. We find the memorial for the Jewish boys who fought in World War I for Germany and died fighting for their country. We find the crematorium where they tortured the Jews during World War II. Breslau had over 1 million Jews. By the end of the war, there were none. And then we see a gray tombstone. It's defaced. It's got no letters on it. But if you look really closely, you can just see the shadow of my great-grandfather's name, Moritz Weissenberg. Danny runs and gets the caretaker, and he makes us write down all of Moritz's information, when he was born, when he died, who he's married to, his children, his grandparents. And then he says, thank you. We lost everything in the war. The least we can do is reclaim the dead. Thank you.
It is amazing the things that we find our families have hidden in the past. Mark Adams, everybody. And now for something like that's right today. Our next performer is Abby Glover in, well, an as yet named show, but it will be named at some point. However, here's what it's about. In a society that rewards striving and achieving, an insecure perfectionist doesn't know when to stop. Abby wants more money, more power, more security, more prestige, more. But what happens when the things you think will set you free trap you instead? Please welcome Abby Glover.
I've been unstaffed for the past 2 days after wrapping up my longest case ever. 4 whole weeks. Being unstaffed or on the beach is the best. You literally get paid to do nothing. You don't even have to come into the office. In pre-pandemic times, I came to the office today because Fridays rule. We get free catered lunch, and unlike a lot of our peers, our company prides itself on having no work weekends. So Fridays really do feel like the start of something special. It's 4 p.m. and I'm getting ready to go home when I get an email. Hi, Abby. Can you please confirm your availability for a 2-week due diligence on skilled nursing facilities at your earliest convenience? Thanks, Betsy, Senior Staffing Manager. Ten years ago, between my sophomore and junior years of college, I went to business camp. Well, because I'm a history major, so I had to gain some real useful skills for the job market. And it's at business camp where I first learned about management consulting. And I've wanted to be a management consultant ever since. At business camp, they say management consulting is a job for people with job ADD. Because you get to jump from project to project, team to team, industry to industry, solve all sorts of different kinds of problems, and you travel. Management consultants always have airline status. And the way everyone talks about it, management consulting, I can tell. Only the smartest people who went to the best schools get to become management consultants. Or maybe they just know the right people. But regardless, it's a job people aspire to, which means there must be a lot of money in it. And I like the sound of that. I never want to worry about money. So in my last 2 years of college, I worked really hard to get those interviews for full-time management consulting jobs. And that's when I come face to face with the case interview. Can I get you to estimate the GDP of the world from the beginning of time? Like I said, I'm a history major, so I start to short circuit because when does time begin? And are we including the bartering economy? How am I going to quantify the bartering economy? Well, I guess I take the GDP of the world today, do something about inflation, and regress it backwards to whenever time began. Can you expand on that? No. So I don't get the job in management consulting right out of college, but I do get a job in consulting. There isn't a case interview for this one, just behavioral. Yeah, so what would you say is your greatest weakness? I got this. I'm a perfectionist, which means I'm always trying to get everything right. But it's also a strength because it means I always do my absolute best, no matter how many of my own boundaries it violates. But I didn't realize that consulting had such a broad definition. Turns out it's kind of like cheese. One broad category, lots of different types. Like, if management consulting is free, something rich, sophisticated, expensive, what I'm doing is more like a big block of reliable, unassuming Whole Foods 365 brand mild cheddar. Risk management? Digital transformation? Compliance? 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 Over 2 years, my projects get longer and less varied in subject matter. But I have job ADD. I want to scream, I need a change. And when they don't grant me one fast enough, well, I quit. In my exit interview, a partner at the company is like, you know, Abby, the grass isn't always greener. And he isn't wrong. No. At 24, I become a job hopper, changing jobs every 1 to 2 years, always moving laterally, never up, always making $65,000 a year. And they always say, know your worth. So I try to negotiate. Yeah, I do my research on market comps and inflation, and I present the number. I won't settle for anything less than $70,000. It's 65. Okay, where do I sign? But by the time I'm 27, I'm sick of it. I want to prove to everyone that I'm worth more than $65,000. Business school. Oh, it'll require $150,000 worth of student loans. But with that Master's of Business Administration, an MBA, oh, I'll be unstoppable. Money, credibility, respect. And on day 1, there's an info session with free food for management consulting interviews. Oh, the type of consulting I've always dreamed of. A real consultant, the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop, the breed of consultants. Oh, 3 main firms, not companies. No, they're more than that. McKinsey, Bain, BCG. I don't get a job at any of those when I graduate, but I do get one at a 2nd tier spot. And it's actually an offshoot of one of the big 3. So we like to think that gives us more clout in the market. And we actually have the highest starting base salary of them all, $170,000. But it turns out I'm still not really doing management consulting. Because even though they sold it as brie, it's more like American cheese. Because I'm mostly doing private equity due diligences, which is basically just like market research for hyper demanding clients. Specifically, I'm doing mostly these 2-week sprints where a private equity firm will come to us and be like, hey, so we want to buy this company and we really need the market assessment yesterday. So we know this is an insanely tight timeline for the amount of work required, but hey, time is money, am I right? And then the partners at our firm are like, sure, we can do it. And by we can do it, they mean Abby and the associates can do it. Oh, I'm a consultant. We're working on new material, folks. Thanks for your patience. Oh, I'm a consultant, yes, which means I'm no more qualified than these 22-year-olds who actually went to better schools than me and have been doing this job longer than I have, but I'm supposed to be telling them what to do because I'm 30 and I have my MBA. And they would resent me, but I'm not a regular consultant. No, I'm a cool consultant because I treat them like equals, even though there is a strict hierarchy here. And here's what happens tactically on a due diligence. You get an email with what project you're on from the staffing team, who basically just kind of push clients serving employees around like cattle from pen to pen. And this email, it tells you, oh, when it comes in, it is go time. No matter what time of day that email comes in, you start immediately. It's like, what? We have to write a call guide and a survey and identify the parameters for the qualifications of the experts, the somewhat informed market participants who charge an exorbitantly high hourly rate and seem to have a lot of time on their hands. But these are the experts that we need to speak with today. And then someone has to sketch out the market sizing approach on a whiteboard with arrows and circles for manager review. And will the TAM, the total addressable market, be a tops down or bottoms up approach? Oh, please God, don't let me be responsible for the model because I don't know how to use Excel. Oh, and by tomorrow, day 2, we need to have the answer to the case question, which is usually, is this company a good investment? Because the manager, he's going to do a drive-by my desk, wanting an early read immediately with conviction. Oh, so that managers are mostly he's, can tell the partner who sold the project, but whose main role seemed to be just giving us feedback at 10 p.m. for a 7 a.m. client call. Well, so he, because they're also mostly he's, can tell the client that his, still mostly he's, investment thesis is indeed, as he expected, sound. I start this job in September, but I don't get staffed on a project until October. And even though everyone says that things are slow and I shouldn't be worried, I look around and most of my cohort is already staffed, and so it's hard not to think that there might be something wrong with me. My first project is a due diligence on skilled nursing facilities, SNFs for short. And they're exactly what they sound like. Facilities where older adults receive inpatient rehab and medical treatment. It's only a few days into the project and I am elbow deep in expert calls with hospital administrators trying to understand. So what criteria do you use to evaluate where to refer patients for their post-inpatient hospital stay care? Because we're trying to figure out how referrals at SNFs work. Referrals equals patients equals revenue. Everything we're doing is in service of evaluating whether this is an attractive investment or not. The fact that more referrals may mean more people's parents and grandparents are admitted to SNFs to strengthen the skills needed to operate in everyday life as they recover from strokes and hip replacements or a bad fall. That doesn't end up in our presentation anywhere. And then the manager swings by my desk. Hey, do you have a minute? Yeah, can you put together a quick slide explaining how Medicare works? We need to get smart on it, fast. Yeah, and I'll take a review of it tomorrow morning. Like all of Medicare? It's gonna be kind of a lot. Like, how much detail do you think you need? I won't know till I see it all on paper. It's 4 p.m. The booklet on Medicare is 48 pages long. And that doesn't take into account all the Googling I do on the side to make sense of it all. I stay up all night. And then the next morning, I have a single slide in size 8 font. So there's Medicare Parts A, B, C. No, wait, that's also called Medicare Advantage, which is different than original, and Part D. So SNFs are covered under Part A, which limits SNF coverage for up to 100 days as long as the following conditions are met, including that they are transferred from an inpatient hospital stay of 3 days, which does not include the day you leave, or any observation days or a stay in the emergency room, even if it's overnight. And then there are these things called accountable care organizations, ACOs, which came out of the Affordable Care Act, which being a part of may help SNFs get referrals, because part of this whole thing about ACOs, and specifically the Medicare Shared Savings Program, is that they are trying to generate savings, which usually happens by reducing the length of stays in a nursing home, or eliminating SNFs from participation altogether, and sending people directly to home health or hospice, which are cheaper. But then when ACOs succeed in delivering high quality care and spending healthcare dollars more wisely, they may be eligible to share in savings. So it could be beneficial for a SNF to be part of an ACO or the Medicare Shared Savings Program. But then it turns out that one of the partners is an expert on Medicare, so you don't even end up using the slide. I do really like call work streams though, because I get to talk to all different kinds of people. Like I talk to independent retailers and big box stores about where they're stacking candles, so we can figure out if anyone's buying candles in July. Oh, and I talk to people who used to work at in marketing departments at big sexy brands, like the kind of brands that do Super Bowl commercials, about their previous usage of media planning software, so we can better understand how it fits into the MarTech stack. And I also talked to a number of DTC brands. Those are direct to consumer brands like, you know, Warby Parker or Casper or Away, to try to understand how they do what they do, so that an aging backpack and messenger bag brand might try some of their tricks. But here's the trick. You just spend a ton of other people's money on customer acquisition and never turn a profit. One of my favorite things when I do a call with an expert is when I get information that no one thinks we can get. Boy, it feels so good. Like in an ideal world, these experts, they would just give us the information that we need. But unfortunately, it's often like proprietary or locked behind NDAs. So, I mean, they can't tell us what their revenue is or their growth plans. That would be crazy. But like one time, I'm working on a dermatology due diligence where we are fully assessing the market landscape. Like the customer doesn't know who they're going to invest in yet. So we're looking at all the companies. They're not practices anymore. They've already been sort of rolled up and branded, and they have a national or at least regional footprint. Yeah. And we need to understand the split between the medical services they provide and the cosmetic, because cosmetic, those are out of pocket expenses, you know, just pure cash. You don't have to deal with insurance companies or reimbursement rates, yada, yada, yada. So I get on a call with this guy who works at one of these places, and he starts the call like, I'm not going to tell you anything. 45 minutes later. Oh yeah, no, Brian, I totally get it. I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't totally get it. But I imagine it would be really hard to have teenage girls. I mean, I was one. So anyways, yeah, about the revenue split. Yeah, I think I have those figures exactly. Oh, no, a range will be totally fine. No, I have it here. Let me see. Oh, yep. Okay, so right now our revenue split is about 47% cosmetic and 53% medical, but we anticipate driving that cosmetic percentage up to about 60% with our new clinic opening in January 2020. Haven't announced that yet, but it's very exciting. And they said it couldn't be done. He said it himself, it wouldn't be done, but I did it. Oh, I got the revenue split we needed. But it doesn't feel good, knowing that the information is just gonna be used by a private equity firm to determine which dermatology company to buy. Because when that happens, well, Brian, he's an expense. And private equity firms, they're not just thinking about the revenue side of things. No, it's profit. And on the expense side, well, they're really good at finding synergies and driving efficiencies. So yeah, Brian in the back office, well, if his company looks attractive enough for PE investment, there might not be a Brian in the back office. So when I make the slide, I at least turn it into a range and leave out the plans for the new cash cow clinic. I've been working here for about 7 months, and it's been going pretty well. I get good performance reviews from my managers when they have time to give them to me. And people seem to like working with me. But some of my friends, they're getting kind of worried about me because my health seems to be becoming a problem. Yeah, because I get really distressed when I'm stressed, which is basically all the time now. Like on a Wednesday at the end of March, I get on a project that was sold as a 2-week due diligence, which would mean finishing on a Wednesday, like 2 Wednesdays from now. But the private equity firm's bid is on a Tuesday. So we actually have to finish the Friday before. So it's the same amount of work, same size team, less time. I stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out this financial model. I'm not very good at models, but I'm supposed to be in charge of it. The client has the data. They said they have it. I mean, do you think we could just ask them if we could have it? No. We need to prove value here. We need to go above and beyond the analysis that they already did. Oh. Right. But I don't get it. I don't get it because I actually need the data from the client to do the analysis. It's customer data, it's private, it doesn't exist anywhere else. I start to get a pain right here in my face. It's like pressure and then random twinges of pain when my jacket brushes up against it. In the office in the middle of the night, I Google it. And unfortunately, I think I have MS or cancer. Both would be life-changing and really expensive. Both would send me into huge financial debt. I'd probably have to move home to my parents' house and be alone for the rest of my life. Ooh. I'm definitely feeling tingling on the side of my face. I don't think I'm making it up. I know it could be a lot of things, but it's hard to overlook that I have some of the early signs of MS. My eyesight's declining, body aches, need to pee. I definitely have bronchitis too, so I also Google that. What happens if bronchitis goes untreated for too long? Because there are no sick days here. I mean, there are like legally, but no one takes sick days. Everyone comes in sick. And I can't go to the doctor. There's no time. I mean, even if I could leave, it would blow up my day. It would blow up my whole team. And they'll end up having to cover for me. They need my body. Really, no one leaves the office. Except for the partners, who are never really there in the first place. And the managers, because they have wives and kids that they go home to. But we consultants and associates, we don't really have partners and kids, so we don't leave. No. Appointments and being sick and having a life are things you do when you're on the beach, not when you're staffed on a project. No. When you're staffed on a project, your time is not your own. You are owned.
Palmer, everybody. All right, we'll take just a minute for Mark and Abby to return to the stage as themselves. I know that sometimes it takes folks a minute or two to feel like what questions they should ask, or should they ask a question, people are really shy. Anybody here want to break the ice? Yes, sir.
I have a question for Abby. Abby, are you still a management consultant? And if you are not, what are you instead?
I am not, and I am nothing.
No.
No, I am taking a career break and I do this a lot. I have a show I do that's like an hour-long show. And work at a soup kitchen. I work at a women's art collective a couple hours a week. So that's what I do.
That's good.
Yeah.
Nothing. I used to work for the guy that's sitting next to you, and he is a former management.
Oh, we bonded over that. Yeah. It was very fortuitous that we all ended up in this together. Yes. Yes.
What's with the hat?
Oh, well. It made a little more sense when I was doing a different version of this, when you actually get to the end. But I take clown classes, and this is part of a clown piece that I've been doing. That's like the person that wants to do everything right and do it all good, and everything's perfect and it's amazing and it's all good. And then it's like this deterioration of so at some point in the clown stuff, the hat comes off and the hair is everywhere. So it turns into a whole thing. So right now I'm just sort of seeing how it feels with words and yeah. So thanks for letting me experiment, everybody.
Yes. And yes, ma'am.
Mark, did you ever talk to your dad about how upset he was, or why the Weissenberg was such a big deal?
You know, so later in his life, we talked about it, but not a lot. And it was, I mean, I think part of it was when he grew up in an era to be Jewish, his goal was to assimilate into America. And so it was just kind of like, become Adams, bury it, why let that be out there? And so of his three brothers, he was the one who was sort of most adamant about keeping that a secret, and literally didn't tell my mother until 25 years after they were married. And so, and you know, I sort of stepped right into the middle of that. That was my fault. And then he sort of came full circle and ended up marrying a Jewish woman. And I think that was part of who he was. He never became Jewish, but I think there was a cultural affiliation with his second marriage that really worked for him.
Yes, in the front row, sir.
Mark, the story about your dad wanting to play with you but not knowing how was really touching. Did he ever figure it out? And did you figure it out? Because he was your role model as a dad.
Well, so that's a really interesting question. No, he never figured out sports. And, you know, that's part of the era of Germany and being Jewish that he grew up in. And just sports wasn't a part of the program. And so literally, you know, I played football in junior high school, and my mother said, you have to go watch your son play one football game. And she said, his number is 74. So go find number 74 and let him know that you're watching him. And so my dad spent the first half of the game on the other team yelling at him, trying to get his attention. So he was a little bit of the absent-minded professor. So no, we never figured it out. But for me, that being athletic and sports is really important. I was not a natural athlete, but as an adult, I've been trying to be much more active because that's something that was important to me.
Yes.
So your grandmother was Margot Adams, right?
Yes,
So was she Jewish?
yes.
But so Adam was also a Jewish name.
Well, Margot Adam, Adam.
Okay.
And so that's a very common Jewish name.
Right.
So yes, so she was 100% Jewish. Yeah, but also of that era of Germany, she was not a practicing Jew, that there were sort of a lot of people who sort of started to step away from the religion, especially as they sort of became more German.
Well, that's what my question, right? He changed the very Jewish name to another Jewish name.
Well, no, they changed it to Adams.
Oh, the S.
They added the S, and I think that was all an effort to assimilate. And you have to realize for them, they moved to New York City in 1940, 1941, and they were Germans living in New York City, but they were not Jewish. They were Protestant. And so everybody hated them. There was they lived in a Jewish community. All the Jews hated them because they had left Judaism, and the Germans hated them because they weren't Jewish. So they struggled to find identity. And so I think that's part of the reason they converted to Adams and then tried to sort of lose that identity.
We had somebody in the second row and then someone in the front.
You talked about Danny's sort of dual identity. if you
Mhm.
like. And I note that you've got a dual identity too, right? You're part WASP, you're part Jewish. How do you reconcile that? How do you think about that for yourself?
So it's really interesting that Judaism, almost as I described it as a child, it's not an identity I identify with. And so Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, all the cultural aspects of being Jewish, and there's this whole question of what's it mean to be a Jew, and I did research on it. There's a cultural component, there's a knowing the traditions, and then there's a religious component to it. And I don't really fall in that. So to me, it's a sort of identity that I am 57% Ashkenazi Jew, but that doesn't mean anything emotionally. Whereas Danny, I think it's a much more, and she's here, she can speak for herself, an emotional attachment to that multiplicity of identity. I also think in some ways I reflect my father's role, which was to assimilate, to lose his distinction. Whereas, and I'm a result of that. So I consider myself very American. Whereas I think children today are much more, no, I have all these different identities. I want to own those identities and hold on to them. And so that's just a different cultural perspective from different eras.
Yes, in the front row.
Oh, I was just maybe a question for both of you. Writing, a little different than management consulting. And when did you start getting into writing? And have you always known you wanted to be a writer?
I can go first. It was my secret dream that I thought I couldn't do because only special people could write. So I never did it. And then the other show that I do is kind of about that, sort of self-discovery of just like, who cares? You know, it's like about all that stuff. And so I basically, had a couple things in my life where I just like couldn't take it anymore. I basically just like was trying to be someone and I wasn't for so long and it exploded. And then I started writing and I wrote a solo show because it was the only way I could figure out how to like do it by myself, essentially. And then from that, it has grown. And now the second piece is becoming a solo show, but it was sort of unintentional. So we'll see what else comes out, but I'm at the beginning of a journey.
And for me, I would say my whole life I've been a storyteller. And I use that a lot in my business career, you know, getting people to do investments or buy projects or whatever. And so it was really fun when I retired to try and start really being artistic and telling stories. And the new thing for me is this whole concept of a monologue and play acting my mother or myself as an 8-year-old. That's a real stretch, but it's fun.
Yes, in the second row.
Yeah, question for both of you. First of all, compliments. I could never do what you guys have done. So I'm just even remembering something for 2 or 3 minutes. So hard. So compliments. For both of you, what was the hardest thing to do? To do what you just did?
Well, I wrote all that stuff today, so
Today.
when I started going from my phone, that was today. So that was definitely the hardest part. And then getting up here and wanting to, it's really hard when you're a performer. The only way you can try things out is if there's an audience. So it's like I could sit in my room and like talk to myself, but it's not the same as having you all here. So I'm I think both super appreciative that you're all here. Because otherwise it's, yeah, you can't do it. So, even though that means sometimes I have to read from my phone, which kills me a little bit because I am a perfectionist and I'm insecure, but, yeah, so that's me.
For me, the hardest part is I had a concept of where I wanted to go, and you start writing and you end up with, 30 pages of material and all sorts of great stories. And you gotta just figure out what's the core essence of what you're trying to communicate and what you're really focusing on and what's the true dilemma. And so I'm working on my second chapter. You just saw tonight the first chapter, which I feel really comfortable with. I'm working on the second chapter, which is fatherhood. And I'm struggling to, I keep going this way, then I go that way, and I'm trying to pull it together into a coherent story that wraps around itself and has a point of view. And that's hard because fatherhood lasts 25 years and there's a lot of pitfalls of the process. But you can see that May 7th if you want. Some form or another.
Just going back to your story, you describe grandma and grandpa as frail people. Did you see them as frail people?
So my memory, and this is my cousin, so she knows.
Sorry,
my
it's Sandy's
grandparents.
fault, sorry.
Yes, I mean, I knew them so little.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally one of 3 memories I have of them.
Huh.
I saw them once every 5 years. If we come to California, they come to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So it was very Spartan.
Yeah.
And you guys had a different experience because you grew up with them, whereas to me, when I saw them, there was this shock. That's a true story of what happened on the street.
Yeah.
I was like, who are these weird people? Then I'm like, oh, it's my grandparents. Because I was shocked by their foreignness.
The foreignness piece I get, I just always saw them as very strong people, especially grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to hear a different take.
Yeah, I saw the physical infirmities. I didn't get to know them that well.
Know them.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So I have a question for the both of you. Does the process of performing, becoming a performer, preparing your stories really inform you more about your own identity and who you really are? Abby, you're doing different things now. You're reflecting back to what you did for a lot of your career. And Mark, as you looked into your grandfather's book, did you find something in yourself that was from him? Maybe adventure or, perseverance.
So, I mean, I'll answer from my side, which was, I started this whole project, and my previous project was writing a screenplay about the same storyline of my grandfather. And the burning issue for me was I love my father and respect him, but I felt like my father and I could have had so much better relationship, but he wasn't accessible completely. There was a part of him that was closed off. And I was just kind of like, I felt bad. I felt like I missed an opportunity there. I wanted to go and understand what had happened in his life that did that. And when I sort of did all the research, I was like, holy shit, now I understand what happened. And so for me, it really put to rest this, what I call gap in my relationship with my father, and helped me understand and appreciate the trauma he went through. So yeah, and I find telling the story, all of a sudden it just puts it to bed. It's like therapy. You can own it and you can say, I've got it. I know what it is and I can put it here and go and worry about other things. So it's wonderful. It's very therapeutic, this process.
I agree, very therapeutic. And yeah, I think, and Mark was talking about this a little bit earlier too, kind of the process of writing something and trying to figure out what's the story and what's important. I start really big, so like, I'm like, oh, when I was 16, I wrote this thing that said, like, work is not life, life is for enjoyment. And then, like, when I was 23, I was like, all I care about is money and success. So it's like, who is that? How did you go from that to then being like, all I want to do is be a management consultant, and so, yeah, it's interesting to like be able to pull threads throughout your life. And the cool thing is, like, there are oftentimes like 5 threads you could pull. You're like, oh, this story could be about being a perfectionist. This story could be about like having money insecurity, this story could be about this, and it can't be all of the things because that would be we'd be here all week, right? So it's like kind of deciding how you frame it and what's coming up for you that feels most relevant at that time. And yeah, I think one of the cool things too is figuring out that sometimes you are kind of the person you've always been. Like sometimes you shock yourself. You're like, wow, I didn't know that I wanted to go to drama school, So yeah, it's definitely cool.
Abby, so it feels like you feel like you're on the right path for you. So I'm just wanting to, I don't know, like expound a little bit more about that. I know that there's a lot of people, a lot of early career professionals who are trying to figure out their path, and there's a lot of people struggling, especially your generation, with money, career balance. And so, how are you feeling about it? Do you feel like you're headed in the right direction?
No, that's another version of this story that could be told. Which is that, it's like when you have these things and when you are who you are and society is society, and like, it's like as soon as I was like, oh, I'm gonna become a performer, I was like, in order to be a performer, I have to go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, I need to get reviews, I need to just, and so it's like, I spent all of 2023 basically being this like, I got married and my husband was like, what's the highlight of your year? I'm like, going to the Fringe. It's like, he's lovely. He's not here tonight. I love you, Josh. But so, yeah, it's like I just replaced performing with that thing. And then this fall, I kind of came to terms with like, yeah, what does success even mean? What am I striving for? What am I doing? What's the point of it all? And so now I'm in the process of sort of unwinding from like, yeah, what does success mean? And because I wasn't balancing anything again, right? And I was always just like external validation, all this stuff. And it's so hard. I don't know. There's no good answer, it's like, we're all friends here. I got married. My husband has health insurance. I get health insurance through my husband. Like it's like, I felt like I couldn't do that. And some people I talk to who have followed whatever their dream is, whether it's arts, whether it's something else that maybe doesn't make as much money or whatever, they're like, oh, well, I figured it out. Like, it actually wasn't as scary as I thought. Like, I was able to get health insurance, and I was able to, at an affordable price, whatever. And so, but then you make trade-offs, right? And so it's really just looking at like, what are the trade-offs I'm making? I don't know, now I'm expounding for real, but it's, yeah, it's so hard, especially when you live in the Bay Area. It's like,
Well, I'm just saying, I'm impressed by your courage.
thank you. I appreciate it. I hope that, yeah, someday I'll just give everyone health insurance.
Biden was supposed to do that. I'm just saying.
I know, so,
I'm not bitter about it
yeah,
still, but he was supposed to do that.
yeah,
Obama tried.
yeah.
Obama tried.
Everyone's trying.
Ish,
I just wanna go to a skilled nursing facility, that's what I.
Yeah. I don't think you want to go there.
You so do not want to go.
You don't want to go to a private equity funded, skilled nursing facility.
Yes, sir.
So Eddie, I really loved your performance. It was equal parts funny and tragic. I didn't know whether I should be laughing out loud like it was stand up or whether I should go up and give you a hug. When you look back on your consulting career with the benefit of hindsight, how do you see it yourself now?
It was not a good fit for me. I mean, it's hard. It's hard because like I went to my 5-year business school reunion this fall, and there's a woman who someone's wife who worked at the company I worked for, and she went to Harvard Business School, and she was the first of our class to quit. She made it about 9 months. I made it a year and 3 months if you count short-term disability leave. And she is now becoming a professor, and she's studying like what it looks like to have insecure perfectionists leading the business world, because like it all like it compounds. It's like when you're being led by someone who doesn't know what they want or is scared to ask the client for something or is scared to be exposed as an imposter, it gets pushed down onto you and then you push it down, until, so, I don't know, there's like a funny meme going around. I don't know how drastic this change has been, but it's like, it says like a consultant in 2014 and they're like, and then it's like a consultant in 2024 and it's like Margot Robbie from Suicide Squad with the like crazy hair. And I don't know about the time of that, but that's how I felt after a year in consulting. But it's also because of who I am, because I'm like, so I want to be right. I want to be perfect. I don't want to ask questions. And actually, I saw some people get penalized for asking questions, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut. It's like the culture of it's not just consulting too, right? It's like a lot of places, startups, law, banking, it's like, it's not cool. I don't know. It sucks. And then people feel like, because it happened to me, gotta happen to you too. And you're like, why?
So the part of your story I love and hate is when you, between a junior and senior year in high school, go to a business camp and fall in love with consulting, and it's just kind of like, you're so naive.
Like,
So you sign on to this dream, and like, what's wrong with our society that we do that to our kids?
yeah, what kids dream is the law.
Same street. Have you thought about or considered, or are you visiting high schools and telling kids there about your experience? Maybe not in a
Business
even
school?
in the same way.
I'm about to
In the
get.
same way you do it, because it's impactful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this piece is like brand new, super rough, like you're the second group of people that's seen any even portion of it. So, I hope to someday. This material is stuff I'm afraid of because I have a lot of friends that work in private equity and I am the way I am because of where I came from, right? So it's like all these people, I went to business school, right? It's like, and so I'm really scared of this piece. But I also think it's important, so hopefully I can finish it and someday share it.
All the schools in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
You performed it.
I mean, consultants,
Saratoga.
I mean, because I had a similar experience. I joined consulting right out of undergrad, and it was cult-like.
Yeah.
There's this belief that, we are gods. And I remember somebody came up to me at a cocktail party and they're like, I said, I worked for McKinsey, and they're like, oh, are you like those other guys? You guys just think you like know everything. And I was kind of like, yeah. And I was 22. I mean, it's scary. So there is this cult aspect to it. So there's a story to be told, and the people in the cult know it,
Right.
and the PE folks know it. They're not that stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your health better now? Do you feel?
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's really good now. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. But it was horrible. Yeah. I had to go on short-term disability leave because I just couldn't handle it. Oh, no, it's not that I couldn't handle it. There's another way to frame that I haven't thought about it yet, but I'm not the problem. Okay. There's nothing wrong with me.
In the front row.
So Mark, so you wrote an excellent story, you did a wonderful performance, and assuming you keep going and write the whole story, what do you want to do with it? You want to go on a road and do a performance?
So it's a really interesting question. That was chapter 1 that you saw. I'm developing chapter 2. So the way at least I develop it, I'm taking this course on Sunday afternoons, and I every week have to come with new material and craft it in front of like 5 or 6 people. And so my goal is to do an hour piece, but as opposed to Abby, I'm trying not to take the consulting approach of, I have to be the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I just want to have fun and tell my story. If it goes somewhere, great. If it doesn't, no problem. For me, this is wonderful to share this with my friends and to sort of cement my story inside of myself and tell it to myself. So that's all I'm trying to achieve. I don't need to have my name in lights, but wouldn't be bad.
Yes.
Mark, have you thought about your story in terms of what's been happening in the world over the last 5 or 6 months?
I'm actually really worried about that because I started this thing and while I was writing it, the whole event happened in Israel and Gaza. And so there's a dynamic to it that I'm trying to avoid, and I'm watching like what's happening right now at Columbia and Yale and these different universities. And I just don't even know how to respond to the fights about, you know, if yesterday I was at a performance and somebody stood up and said, you know, from the river to the sea. And I'm not sophisticated enough to know, is that an anti-Semitic statement or not? And, you know, I just don't want to get into the fight because I'm a little bit wary after conversations I have with pro-Trumpers and things like that. I'm trying to avoid that, but so I don't have an answer on that. And in some ways I shield myself by, I think, my earlier comment that I don't identify Jewish. So I take what I'd call a more distanced third-party perspective as an American. And I don't have that identity, but it's something that worries me. And I can speak as openly as this because I know all of you.
Family on the fatherhood piece, are they excited about that piece?
So before. No, so this whole project started as a screenplay. And Danny was the protagonist in the screenplay. And so before I'd actually review scenes with her, and she's seen all this material and approved it. And before I'll say anything publicly, the kids will see it and approve it, make sure they're comfortable with it. So that's part of the process. And it's been a wonderful process because that story that I told you about, that hike with Danny and that whole perspective came out of some of those conversations. You know, and I start to see how they view the world differently than how I viewed it. And that's really enlightening to me.
Just a comment for Mark, and I liked how you talked about your time in Indonesia and Maryland and how the world saw you guys at that point in time.
Mhm.
And how the world, and it reflects today how the world still sees people in different levels and puts people in boxes. So I think that's nice because it just brings out awareness again. So like that component.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's something I've had to learn because I realize I see the world through the glasses of a old white male, old, pale and stale. And so it's through these dialogues and conversation, I kind of go, oh gosh, if you look different or you don't quite fit, this is how the world is seen differently. That's something I'm trying to sort of be more aware of.
Any last questions before we wrap things up here? Any burning questions from anybody? All right. The last thing we like to do always is I like the way you got up and said that. How can we find out about you more, online or in any other way? Abby?
My website is Abby, like the church, ABBEY, Glover, like Danny Glover or Donald Glover, depending on your generation, .com. I'm performing Wednesday night, a truncated piece of this at the Mechanics Institute Storytelling Showcase. And if you have any friends in Vermont, I'm gonna be in Vermont next Friday, May 3rd, doing my show, my full-length show called Abby's Box, about the boxes we put ourselves in. So, yeah.
And then you're going to French this year?
No. Probably never again. No.
And then for me, I don't have a website. You can send me an email at madams1@gmail.com. And my next show is upstairs on May 7th, which will be chapter 2.
All right, thank you.